we have a front that's coming in, and it blew in all of these clouds that you see here, and the sun is kind of hazed over, but there's some clear areas there towards the horizon that close to sunset. I'm hoping that the sky will become colorful. What I want to show you is this idea that I have, and how there are some very useful tools with the camera. Mine being a mirrorless, yours might be mirrorless, it may be a DSLR. If it's a current one, like within the last 5 to 10 years, you should have all of these tools available to you. So I'll get to that in a minute, but right now I need to scope this place out and see if I even have something worthy to show you here. So I'm set up, the sun is setting behind me, and so I'm liking the light over this way. I'm hoping that these clouds will light up with some color in a little while, so we'll see what happens with that. But why do I have this so high off the ground? Look, I am almost 6 feet tall at eye level. This is where the camera would be focusing, right? If I had the camera up to my eye, would be right about here. And as you can see, it's about maybe 8 inches above that. So we're looking at about 6.5 feet above ground for this tripod and camera setup. This is a very low country. This is a prairie, and everything is low-lying. The highest elevation here is 20 feet, give or take. So when I'm looking off in the distance and I see a lot of trees, I see some palmettos, some shrubs, grasses, everything kind of blends together. There's no separation. There's no huge mountain in the background separating what's in front of it. So in order to get some separation between one tree and another, I need to have a higher perspective. So if I bring this up off the ground a bit higher than eye level, I can almost get that a little more separation that I like to see. All right, once I have the camera set up, I need to do 3 things. I need to compose the image, I need to expose the image, I need to focus. So those 3 things. How am I going to do that down here when everything is up here? I can't look through the viewfinder. How am I going to be able to do all that stuff? So I have some very useful tools that come with this camera, and it is very likely that your camera offers all of these tools as well. If you have a mirrorless camera, I'm going to guess that you do have all of these tools. If you have a DSLR, a newer brand or a newer model, you likely have all these tools as well. So let's start with the first one that's very useful. So the first useful tool that I have here is that I can take the LCD panel and I can swivel it out and face me so that I don't have that glare on it, and I can easily see the composition from here. By looking at that LCD panel, I can now make adjustments. I can zoom in, zoom out. I have to reach a little bit to do that. But I can make all those adjustments and compose my image. Next thing I need to do is expose the image. So because I shoot manual, I need to adjust my ISO, my shutter speed, and my aperture. So what I end up doing is I set the aperture at f14. I want some depth of field. With a bigger lens, you tend to lose that depth of field. But because everything is far away, I'm not too concerned about that, but I still want to make sure everything is in focus. F14 is my go-to aperture, so I went ahead and set it at F14. ISO I'm not worried about, so I just set it at 200. It could be 100. It really doesn't matter for this type of setting. So what that means is that I'm going to adjust my shutter speed to adjust the exposure. So I'm going to add light or decrease light just by adjusting my shutter speed. So how can I tell if I'm getting the right exposure? I can tell because my camera, like all mirrorless cameras, has live view. If you have a DSLR, one that came out like within the last 10 years, you likely have live view as well. Now, what does live view allow you to do? It allows you to see the exposure. as you are changing the exposure, you can look through the LCD panel, and sometimes you can look through the viewfinder and see it, but on the LCD panel, I can adjust my shutter speed, I can add light or decrease light, and I can see that happening on that panel. Now, there's another tool that I rely on more than just that, and that is the histogram. Chances are, if you have live view, you also have live view histogram. Now, that histogram, you can choose to have it show up on the screen. So with my screen, I don't have anything in the way except for the little histogram on the bottom right corner. But I want to see that histogram because that's going to tell me if I'm getting the right exposure. I don't want to underexpose and lose detail in the dark areas, nor do I want to lose detail in the brighter areas. So by having that histogram right there on the LCD panel, while I adjust my exposure, I can adjust the histogram, and I can put it where I'm not going to lose any data. Now, the last thing I need to do is focus. Now, with the focus, you can choose where you want the camera to focus. You can choose a wider area or a very small area. I'm going to use spot focus, which is a small area, small focus point. Now, with these newer cameras, a lot of them offer touch screen. If you have touch screen on your camera, I highly recommend you use it in a situation like this, because what I can do is I can adjust the focus point just by touching the LCD panel. So I can move that focus point to where I want it to be. And once I have it in place, I'm ready to go. Okay, there you have it. There's 4 things that I'm really relying on here. I'm relying on this LCD panel, so thankfully it can flip down towards me. I'm relying on live view. I'm especially relying on the histogram to set my exposure. And I am relying on that touch screen so that I can focus exactly where I want it to be focused. So with that, all I need is some color. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm going to stay here, hang out, and we'll see what happens.